Hello, it's your friend Professor Kyra. And the topic I have to you, I have mentioned a lot in a lot of different videos, but I want to spend one just good video talking about this particular topic in very heavy depth. And this topic is just simply handlers. I'm going to spend some time talking about what handlers are, give you some examples of what handlers have done for me, teach you some things about how you can become a handler, and just everything in between. Okay? Handlers are super important because, well, they're there to keep you safe. That is kind of the most simple definition of what a handler is. But handlers really don't have a definitive sort of definition. They are, well, what you need them for. So the way I look at a handler is they are your second set of eyes, they are your voice, they are your helper, they are your caretaker, and they're your best friend. Now, they don't necessarily have to be, but when I go into some explanation, you'll kind of see what I mean by that. Okay? Okay, so I have my handy dandy iPad here because I want to make sure that I'm talking about everything because this is a very important topic. And I've had people ask me before about handlers and like, how can I become a handler? And I will happily teach you because I am, yes, a fursuiter, but I'm a mascot as well. And I have been a handler for mascots. I have all the information that I find is very helpful to give to you if you're either wanting to be a handler or you're just curious. Handler's super important, and I'm going to say that a million times in this video, okay? Okay, so I do want to kind of talk about the difference in like a mascot handler to a fursuit handler. So the best way I can just describe a fursuit handler are conventions. Conventions specifically because you're going to need them when you're there. Or honestly, any kind of public suiting, you're going to want to have a handler because they're going to keep you safe. They're going to make sure you're doing okay. They're going to communicate for you if they have to, whatever the case may be. They are sort of like more of a looser, like loosely structured individual. The way I describe it is for a reason. So for fursuiters, they are just keeping an eye. There's no structure. There's nothing that they really have to be doing, which is very important for this video. Because, like I said, handlers have many definitions. So fursuit handlers are going to be doing, making sure you got water, just keeping an eye on you, this, that, and sort of everything in between. Now, mascot handlers are very different, but also very similar. They also are going to be your eyes, your ears, your voice, all that good stuff. But being a handler for a mascot is far more structured, and you have a lot more responsibilities, which I will get into. I want to talk about what handlers have done for me specifically before I start talking about why handlers are important and what they're doing for each of these kinds of things and all that good stuff. I really want to talk about some bad experiences I've had being a handler and why me being a handler in that situation was very important because I protected the individual I was with. So what I want to start with is what have handlers specifically done for me that if I didn't have a handler in this situation, could have been bad. So, one of the times that I was fursuiting, I was public suiting, I was actually doing some charity work, my handler was my sister. It was one of the first times that I was like kind of out and about in the community with my fursuit, and everything was going pretty well. I had just interacted with some older individuals who were having a great time, loved the fursuit, happy joy. Well, when I was done interacting with them, I had moved on, of course, and started looking at, and this is very important. So they were at the top of this hill, this older group that I was, interacting with. I had gone down this little hill, and there were some like vendor kind of setups over here. I was kind of wandering around, kind of just looking and stuff. In this area, there was a group of teenagers. Need I say more? they started going off about, oh, I'm going to rip their head off, I'm going to beat them up, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, yada, yada, yada. Now, I was a little bit distracted, so I did not hear the initial sort of conversation that was going on, and this was happening behind me, but my sister did. Now, my sister had turned to me and said, hey, there's a group behind you that is saying all these things, you know, just be very careful. And that was when I had to acknowledge them, and I was like, oh well, they can try, we're in public, they do that, they're going to not only get kicked out, but they're going to get charges pressed against them, so have fun, I suppose. But that was when I happened to turn my head also and notice the individuals I was just interacting with on the top of the hill were absolutely grilling this group of teenagers. And we're starting to come down the hill because they were starting to kind of you could kind of see the communication, and they were pointing and like, they knew something was off. I'm laughing in suit and I move on. I didn't see the aftermath. I don't really care because like I was fine. My handler alerted me to the situation and we're good. That's one really good thing about handlers is they can communicate things to you that you might not be catching. And it's just one of those really important things when you're out and about, because you are not going to catch everything. There was a time when I went trick-or-treating with a friend in my fursuit just for funsies, and was wandering around kind of hanging out with them because their kid was very happy to have me with them and like really wanted me to go with them in my fursuit. And I was like, yeah, let's go, let's do this. I was only trick-or-treating for like maybe an hour, but in this hour I was followed by an individual who was not only following me, they were threatening me from a distance. They would always keep at a distance and yelling like biblical things at me. And it was very odd because this was Halloween night. There was many people that are dressed up in costumes, but you're going to pick on the fursuiter. There was also a group of individuals that did the kind of the same thing. They walked by, they were screaming things at me for profanities, and these were teenagers and there were little kids around. My friend's kid was like 7 at the time. So they're screaming profanities when there's a kid right here. Real classy. That particular night, like the person was still following me and all this stuff. I didn't have a handler, so I started to panic. If I had a handler, I think the situation could have went a little bit differently, but I'm just kind of explaining this to explain how not having a handler can be dangerous. But I'll give you the conclusion to that story, because I had to defend myself in this situation, and you may have to do the same. So the individual that was stalking me was starting to get a little bit closer to me, still keeping at a distance, and I always try to keep them in my vision. I got fed up because that group of people, I was already exhausted. It was the end of October, but it was so ungodly humid. I was dying. There was no air. I was like, all right, I can't do this. I was in my full suit too, so I was like, I can't do this. I got so fed up because my friend was paying attention to their kid. I'm not expecting them to keep an eye on me. I want them to keep their kid safe. I have personally never ripped my head off for anything. Didn't matter how hot I was, anything. This was the one time that I ripped my head off and I stared down the guy that was following me, who immediately got into the closest car. So then I kind of figured how he was getting around so quickly, because we were going around this huge development, because he was getting dropped back off after a while, because he wasn't like, he'd be there for a while and then I couldn't find him. And then he would show up again. So he was in a car with somebody, hops in the back seat, car disappears. The group of kids that walked by was like, oh my God, it's a girl. And they took off running, which I thought was hilarious. And I've never been more empowered as a woman when a situation like that happened. It was really scary. I did not put my head on for the rest of that night. I was terrified. And I actually got really upset because I was having a really fun time. And you always have people that have to ruin it. If I would have handled in that situation, they could have handled it for me. They probably would have said something, fended off, whatever they had to do. Handlers are there to help you in those kind of situations. And yeah. Handlers have protected me from a lot as a mascot. Tail pulling, getting tripped. I actually, I had these teenagers, it's always teenagers, when I was mascotting, there was like 2 in front of me, and there was one who I didn't catch that was behind me, like bent over, and their friend was about to push me. Handler kind of got an idea that something weird was happening, yelled at them, they went on their way. I want to talk about now my experiences as a handler. And there's one particular instance that drives me absolutely nuts. And I have never been more afraid of my own self in a situation, because usually I'm a pretty timid, pretty chill person. But in this situation, fight or flight was absolutely, like, scary, in my opinion. And I'll explain why. So, at the end of last season that I had worked at my mascot job, I was a handler as well as a mascot when I wasn't working, because I wasn't working every single game. The games I wasn't working, I was helping out as a handler because my friend's handler quit at the end of the season unexpectedly. So I was like, hey, I go to the games anyway, so let me help out. And I know the routines, so I know where you have to be when you have to be there. Because when you're a sports mascot, you have to be in certain places in certain times. So that's kind of a big responsibility for a handler, for a sports mascot, is keeping eyes on the schedule. We have schedules that we have to follow. We usually have team meetings at the very beginning of the game and say, hey, this is what's going to happen at this time, this time, this time. And it's on the handler to kind of make sure that we are getting to where we need to go. Because being a mascot is fun, it's great and everything else, but we are still at our job, and we still have things that we need to make sure we're doing. We have pregame stuff we have to do. Sometimes we have postgame stuff we have to do. We have intermission stuff we have to be a part of, and everything in between. So that's what this handler is kind of awesome at, is just making sure we stay on schedule. It's a very big difference between a mascot handler and a fursuit handler. So, let me talk about what happened to me towards the end of last season that really pissed me off when I was a handler. And these are the kinds of situations that if you want to be a handler, whether it be for a mascot or another fursuiter, this is the kind of stuff that you may encounter that you need to act on the spot. I was following my friend. Everything's great. I'm the protective handler. There are different types of mascot handlers. There's the interactive ones. There's the, I'm just going to stand here and just watch. And then there's the very protective ones that are like security. I'm the protective one, like security, because I know what it's like to be a mascot. So I know that I need to be protective of them, because people out in this world are absolutely insane and treat mascots like shit. So the way that the arena that I work at is set up is there's a concourse that goes all the way around, and to get into the seating bowl, you got to go up some steps. There's a platform, because the platform will either go down into the lower seating bowl or up into the higher seating bowl with staircases. My friend was on the platform. So there's some stairs here, there's some stairs here, and kind of here. I'm going and breaking the planes of dimensions here. We don't have to worry about the up steps. These are going to be, we're going to focus on these down ones, because this is where the incident happened. So my friend's on the platform. They're dancing, they're doing their thing. There was teenagers. They were there for a chorus thing. They like sang national anthem, something like that. So a school, these school kids, these were high schoolers. These 2 girls came up these steps, and like I'm standing against the wall, because there's like an entrance with an actual like doorway. I'm standing against the wall at this platform, just keeping an eye, trying to stay out of the way so my friend can do what they have to do, but just keeping a protective eye, because stairs are not your best friend when you are a fursuiter or a mascot. So I'm just making sure if there's anyone coming, I can kind of guide the individuals kind of around them, so my friend is safe, and so are they from accidentally getting hit by my friend. These girls come up, they kind of looked at my friend really weird, and then they like went down the steps, and I was like, all right, whatever. My friend turns around, and as soon as my friend is no longer facing down the seating bowl and facing the doorway and not paying attention, and right at the top of the stairs to go back down onto the concourse, these girls come charging up the steps, and I was like, no, I'm gonna get behind my friend because they were coming up way too quick and they could push my friend down the steps. I wish I would have said more than I said when this situation occurred, because I was livid, and the fact that I didn't get them in further trouble is beyond me, that I'm mad at my past self for. So, girls get behind, but I quick sneak in right behind my friend, and they didn't like that. What I didn't realize they went down the steps for was to grab their chorus binders. They were binders that had all their sheet music in it. They had grabbed those and darted back up the steps. And just as my friend is walking down the steps, now there's a dad with a really, really, really little one just past the bottom of the steps that my friend had saw and was going to go interact with. So my friend is completely distracted. One of the girls took their chorus binder as my friend is still on the stairs, whipped it behind them, and mid-swing, I screamed at them because they were going to hit my friend in the back of the head. And I was like, stop! You don't do that! And I scared these girls because they didn't realize I was with them. I wasn't just some random person standing there. They quick turned around to me, and my friend then looked and saw kind of what was happening. And they're like, I was just kidding. I wasn't going to actually do it. I was like, I don't care. You don't do that. I had to talk to them like a parent. And then they like scampered off somewhere else. And like the absolute anger I had like quickly died down, because I was like, well, now I don't know if they're going to do something. But I was on complete fight or flight the rest of the night, because I was like, they were about to, because, okay, let's say they did and I didn't step in quick enough. They hit my friend on the back of the head. My friend is now going to fall forward and not only hurt themselves, but they are going to fall on this maybe 1 or 2 year old child at the bottom of the steps that these girls did not see clearly. I never was more scared for my friend's safety in my entire life than that moment. If I wasn't there, what would have happened? This is why handlers are extremely important. Because you have jackasses like that in the world who think it's funny to physically assault people who are just trying to do their job. It's honestly really sad. And every time I think about that story, I get like kind of upset, because I'm like, what would have happened if I didn't, like, I'm very timid, but like, don't fuck with me. And in that situation was one of those, because if I hadn't stepped in, what would have happened? My friend could have very well been dead if they fell wrong, and they could have killed that kid. They could have actually crushed that child. So, why are handlers important? Because they protect the furry ones like me, who are mascots or fursuiters or whatever. So, I guess then it becomes, well, that sounds horrible. How do I become a handler? It's very easy. It honestly is super, super easy. If you happen to know fursuiters, ask them. Like, hey, you know, say they want to go and do public suiting events, but they're really nervous because they don't want to go by themselves, just them. Offer to go with them. And just keep an eye on them, make sure they're safe and they can have their fun. And you're just there to make sure they're doing good, make sure they're hydrated, and just make sure everything is smooth sailing for them. It's that simple. Now, what if you want to be the mascot handler that screams at people for doing stuff like I had to deal with? It's honestly not super hard, because a lot of sports teams, or at least they should have them, have like the handlers for their mascots. It doesn't hurt to reach out and ask, like, hey, do you guys need a handler for so-and-so, or an extra person or whatever, like, I'd like to work there. And basically you would just work there like it's a regular job, because I got paid to be a handler as well as being the mascot, so it was nice either way. The only thing is, being a handler for a mascot is a lot more difficult, in my opinion. It is a lot more running around, kind of making sure you are the eyes and ears and mouth of the mascot that you work for. Remember, mascots don't talk, so you have to understand the body language and what your friend is trying to tell you, because it's very important to do so. You have to have a voice too. I realize that. You need to have a voice. You have to be protective. Your job as a handler is to keep your mascot friend very, very safe. And make sure no one is pulling tails. No one's trying to trip them. No one's trying to bash them over the head with a binder while they're going down steps. So, it's very simple. But handlers are super important. And I cannot stress it enough how important they actually are. And I have mentioned them a lot. So I wanted to kind of just make a video and just talk about them. Now, if you have any questions about handlers, please ask. I will always give advice and help for things like this because safety is always very important to me. And you should be able to have fun fursuiting or being a mascot without the worry. And that's what handlers are for. So if you want to become a handler, do it. It's really fun. It honestly is. You get to hang out with some really cool people doing some really cool things. But as always, questions, ask. I'm here to help. So, yeah, this was fun. Handlers are important. Never forget that, okay? Okay. Bye-bye, guys.